Hi, today from my travel. Today we'll be talking about traveling in the times of disease, in the times of Corona. How to travel internationally when others are sitting in their cages. See you in the next part. First, you need to get to the airport. This may be a challenge in some countries. Some countries restrict your movements within a country. This is not the case in Germany, where I depart from. And as you see, all public means of transportation function almost in a normal way in Germany. Local transportation keeps the schedule, and long-distance transportation, some of the courses don't take place, but you can generally get from any point in Germany to any point in Germany with public means of transportation. As you see, I am right now in ICE, fast train in Germany, going to the Frankfurt Airport for the flight. The only restriction you have in Germany is wearing masks, meaning you need to cover your mouth and your nose in public transportation. This is the first terminal in Frankfurt Airport in Germany. Usually there are thousands of people, big crowd here, but as you see, it's not that many today. And behind me you see the flight table. And usually we have one flight every minute, one flight every 2 minutes maybe. But today, if you look at the table, there is maybe one flight every 5 minutes. So the flights are more rare than usual. Here in Germany, all the local flights take place, or most of them take place, but the international flights are a challenge. They are more rare, because you can't fly to many countries. The borders are closed or the flights even prohibited. But you can fly to some countries, and there is a low frequency of these flights. For example, in Europe, you can easily fly to Sweden from Germany, because Sweden turned out to be a free centered country in the Corona crisis, and they allow visits from outside. They haven't closed borders for at least EU citizens, so you can fly to Sweden, and that's where we are going to fly today. We'll fly to Stockholm Arlanda, and see how it works. Okay, international travels. We've been talking about getting to the airport, or getting to the border in your country, about moving around in your country. This is something you need to pay attention to. The next thing is, can you actually leave your country? So the second thing you need to clarify: can you actually leave your country? Will they let you out? And it depends, of course, if you are traveling on land, and this is a land border, or you're flying, you're traveling via with a plane. And then it's not the same to leave your country and to enter another country. And most countries, most democratic countries, let actually the citizens to leave their country. There may be border checks if you are living, like between European countries. There are no border checks on when you leave a country on the airport, but there is right now at the moment in most countries an entry check. But they are border check right now, and I'm talking about that on May 29th. But they are border checks between the countries, between most of the countries in Europe. But outside countries, if they don't belong to any union or whatever, they are usually border checks. But most democratic countries let people leave their country. But there are some countries that don't let you leave in the Corona crisis. So you need to clarify that. This was the second thing, actually. The third thing is, can you actually enter the country that your target country? But there is one step between, and I will call that the third step, and this is transit. Because it may happen that in your country flights, international flights just don't work. They closed the airports, or they restricted the flights, or they prohibited the flights. So you need to leave your country on transit to go in another country and then take a plane from there. So you are in a transit through a third country, so to say. And some countries allow transit traffic. You need to clarify that. So you, depending on your situation, you may be allowed to transit that country to access the airport and then to leave to another country. And this is a good solution for some people when there are major airports nearby and that are more trafficked and that they are not closed and they are in operation. And usually transit for business purposes is allowed. So if you have a good reason to transit, to go to your destination country, you will be allowed for transit. And tourism is usually not a good reason for that. So you need, let's say, an appointment in another country, a business appointment, so that you're allowed to travel. Let's say I'm going to Stockholm right now. If you have an appointment with a lawyer in Stockholm, if you have an appointment with a real estate broker in that town, in that country, that is set, that you can somehow verify, then it is a good reason. Of course, if you have an urgency, you attending, let's say, a funeral or a wedding, this may be also a good reason. Or maybe, important business meeting, and you have a meeting of your advisory board. This is a good reason to travel to that country. So this would give you a good point to clarify to custom clerks that you need to go there, right? The fourth point that you need to clarify is actually, can you enter the country, your target country? And in Corona times, there are a lot of restrictions. Most countries, or many countries, don't allow foreign citizens to enter the country. They are shut, right? They shut the borders down. But there are freedom-loving countries that didn't shut the borders, or that shut the borders only partly. And of course, one thing is the reason of your travel. If you travel in business, for business, it's easier to enter any country than when you are a tourist. This is one thing. And the other thing is depending on your nationality, on your citizenship. So for example, Sweden, that I traveled to, they didn't close the border at the beginning, but then they yield to the pressure of other European countries. So Sweden then closed the border for foreigners that don't live in European Union or European area, meaning Great Britain, Switzerland and Norway. But if you live in these countries, you are allowed to enter Sweden. So this is the fifth thing that you need to clarify, is the restrictions in your target country. I mean, there are restrictions of movement maybe in the country that you travel to. If you go to France, for example, French people at the moment that I am recording that are allowed only to move in a circle of 100 kilometers around their house, and they are allowed to go out only for 1 hour a day or something, right? So there are strong restrictions of movement. If you find yourself living there or going there or spending your time in that country, you are also subject to these restrictions. This is one thing. And the other thing is, you may be forced to take a 14 days of quarantine. Maybe it's shorter, but you may be forced to quarantine after entering that country. So you have to clarify that before you travel. If you go to Sweden, for example, from Europe, there is no quarantine. So you are on the safe side. And then, of course, the other part of your travel is to come back to your country. So can you leave actually the country, your target country? And then can you come back to your country and enter your country? And the third thing is actually what about the quarantine when you come back? So these are the points that you need to clarify. I will be going to Stockholm now, and I will tell you the next part of the story from Stockholm. See you. On German airports, a distance of 1.5 meters is obligatory, and every second seat is deactivated. So being allowed to Sweden is not a problem. There is no border control whatsoever at the Stockholm airport. I came from Germany without being checked, not even one time. So I didn't need to show my passport. It's easy as it used to be. If you see anything on the TV that it is difficult to travel in Europe, it's definitely not between Germany and Sweden. So today you could see my journey from Germany to Sweden. The first part of my journey. As you can see, I am in Stockholm now, and there was absolutely no problem to get on plane from Germany to Stockholm. There was not a single border control between Germany and Sweden. There was no border control when I was living in Frankfurt, Germany, and there was no border control at the entry in Stockholm. In reality, I wasn't requested to show my ID at any time during that journey. I got from Frankfurt, from Germany to Sweden without verifying my identity. So if you hear on the TV about not being able to travel in Europe, this is only partly the truth. You can travel if you know how to do that, and if you find out the right way to do that. And of course, the rulers of the nations, of the states in Europe or around the world, they may not want you to travel, they may not want you to move around, they may want to enslave you and make you dependent on them, but don't listen to them. Think on your own terms, think independently. In the first part of the series, traveling in the times of disease, traveling in the times of Corona, I showed you my journey to Sweden from Germany. In the next part, I will show you how the life during Corona looks like in Sweden, and of course my way back to Germany. So if you like this video, give me a thumb up. If not, of course, thumb down. Subscribe if you haven't. Share this video with your loved ones, with your friends. One day they will thank you for that. I talk here a lot about living an independent, free life, about individualism, about business on the highest level, on the level of self-made billionaires. I talk here about how the billionaires that I personally know think and act. So if you like this video, you will certainly like my other videos. I invite you to watch them. That's it for today from Stockholm. I wish you a fantastic day. Let's do something extraordinary today.